Welcome to the podcast with your favorite cash flow guys, Mike and Blaine. Giving you the best advice while having a beer. When you're running a business, there are problems every day. Let Mike and Blaine help you out and guide your way. Cheers to the good times with Mike and Blaine for business, beer, and BS.
Hey, it's Mike and Blaine. This is episode 166. I'm Mike Mylan, also known as Cash Flow Mike. That is my friend, my partner, and the CEO of Drive Run, the best cash flow forecasting software on the planet, Blaine Birch. What's up, my man?
This feels like an eternity because we didn't do last week because I was driving between countries last week, and you were flying between because you were down in Mexico last week. And so it's awesome to be back. It feels like it's been months somehow, and it's only been like a week extra.
Hey, think about that. We covered the entirety of North America.
Mm-hmm. We did. And, and we probably had beer in all three countries within like days.
Easy. within days of each other. Yeah, within days of each other. I think, yeah, that's fine. That's pretty funny. I had a great time in Cabo, and I missed this. Right. I don't know what it was. Remember last year when I went to, or was it last year or 2 years ago that I went to Cabo, and I actually did an episode in Cabo.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was so fun. But I got to tell you, if we tried that this time, and after like I drove all day, I could barely function. So I would have been awful if we had attempted that while I'm driving. If I'm landed somewhere good, but man, I realized that night I'm like I can barely function after driving all day.
Yeah, we definitely needed a break. I was okay with that. I mean, 166 episodes, 66, right? That's huge. And we're a little late today because we didn't talk for a week, so it was like we were like two old ladies at a fence, like, just catching up on what happened.
And they were just like, oh, shit, we better get started here. So now we're trying to remember what we're doing here and get going. So we always start off with our beers of the week and our beer sponsors. So what are you drinking today?
All right, so I got to tell you, neighbor Pat, one of our beer sponsors, walked this down yesterday, but he didn't just walk down this beer, right? And it's not one that he brews. Usually he brews one. He says he's got one kind of almost cooking for me, but he brought down one that he loves. And he says, I drank it a few times and it tasted flat, and then I read the instructions. So he had to come down and train me. So I got a training session on how to pour this beer last night. So if I don't do it right, Pat's going to be mad at me. So what we have, and I've seen the milk stout, but I've never seen the Belgian white Nitro by Left Hand.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Oh, I
so
like Left Hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason why it was flat is that he didn't activate the Nitro. He just popped the bottle and he was drinking. He's like, oh man, this tastes like shit. But he goes, he went online. This is what was funny. He went online to figure out how to drink a Nitro and how to pour it. And you got to pour it. He says, make sure you have a glass. So I got a glass. Got that Cardinals glass, right? 11-time world champions. But he said he went online. He couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden he looked at the label, and there's instructions on the label. Nice. But he's like, well, what's wrong with this beer? So let me do this, but I have to pop the top, right? And it's an interesting pour when you think about it, because it isn't just, you can't tilt the glass. You can't do it like this. You kind of have to do it like this, right? All at once. Yeah. It's a big dump, right? So that's what activates the Nitro. And I hope I have a big enough glass. But let's watch the fall, right? This is one of the things I like about like Guinness and those. Can you see?
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's just like pouring a Guinness or a Kilkenny. There it is right there. Yeah. You dump it right in and it just works. That's beauty.
That's what he brought down. So, hey, thanks, neighbor Pat. We always appreciate you. And I can't wait. I think he's got a pumpkin kind of fermenting or whatever it does during his brewing process. So I got a pumpkin beer coming next.
Nice. Awesome. Well, so I got down to Scottsdale here and fridge almost empty. Still have to do, we did a minor beer run, got a few things, but none of them sort of matched our topic today. And I had this beer in the fridge from last year. And I thought, man, this is a terrific name for a beer. Just clever. This is Lake Pleasant Brewing chocolate coffee stout.
Nice. I've been really
Which-
into those lately.
Sounds delicious, but I gotta say, when I looked at the can and looked at the label, I'm like, well, I think they could have come up with something a little more ingenious than just chocolate coffee stout. Yeah, I get it. It's that's what's in the can, but it is a really nice beer. So I'm actually quite enjoying it, and wanted to make sure I actually got. Well, it's actually, oh shit, Phoenix, Arizona. I was gonna say, like, where are these guys from? I don't even know where these guys are. Okay, so I guess they're local too. So there we go. Local guys, good on you. That's a good beer, but I would recommend doing something a little more fun with the label next time. But anyway.
Whoa, a little criticism over there from Blaine Birch.
Very rare, but when it comes to design, I'm always got an opinion. I just don't always share it. So.
Yeah. Hey, you know who can design your training program for QuickBooks? That's Rachel Barnett over at Gentle Frog. So if you're using QuickBooks and you're like struggling, like, oh man, I just don't get it, contact Rachel, man. She's been one of our longtime beer sponsors. I mean, she buys a year at a time. So contact Rachel over at Gentle Frog. We love her and what she's doing with QuickBooks users.
Oh yeah, and Larry Weinstein, he's been a sponsor forever. He's a sponsor through the end of the year. Larry Weinstein, CPA in Houston, Texas. If you need some help with your CPA in accounting, cash flow, he's the cash flow cowboy. Go talk with Larry Weinstein in Houston. He'll help you out.
There you go. Hey, we got Jackie York still. We got Jackie out in Hawaii, blooming CFO. I mean, if you need a CFO, she like specializes, I think, in like landscaping and nursery type businesses. That's what we talk about the most when I'm talking with her. So I think even her logo is like a flower, a plant. So if you're in that type of business, that industry, and you need somebody to guide you, you know, with some good CFO advice, contact Jackie York over at Blooming CFO.
And Baltimore Mike, the other Mike Milan. Thank you so much again, Mike. I love all the beer you send, and you know, like, have a mild appreciation for the texts that you guys send back and forth on your football every week. And I got a kick out of some of them, but apparently, you know, like, you guys just get just back and forth all week. And I think you're starting to get into some pretty, like, you know, the deep stats here to try and bolster your view.
Hey, if you notice from the text, there's only one stat that matters, right? First of all, I'll let y'all guys know that Baltimore Mike, of course, likes the Ravens, and if you know me, I like the Chiefs, right? So and that decanter up there that has stayed for at least all this year so far is called the Mike Milan Bowl. So anytime the Chiefs play the Ravens, the winner of that gets to keep the decanter, the Mike Milan Bowl trophy. And this year I won it, right? Last year I won it, and then again this year. But hey, there's another opportunity for us to play in the playoffs, right? So there's still a little bit of we could play one more time. I could still end up sending that thing to Baltimore. But his team is it's just a team. He focuses on the player. He thinks that Lamar Jackson is better than Patrick Mahomes. And that's tough, right? He's super smooth. I got to tell you, when I see that guy move, when I see him pass, when I see him run, this guy is just like butter, man. He's great. Puts up a ton of stats. But the only stat that matters right now is that the Chiefs are 8-0. They have not been beat. And until they get beat, no stats by Lamar are better than anything by Patrick Mahomes because he hasn't been beat.
All right. I'll buy that because that's wins are worth a lot. But again, thanks for the beer, Mike.
Thanks for the beer. Hey, we had two beer sponsors kind of drop off, just not because they quit. It's just because that's the way the timing was. But I want to mention both of them in one story. I get a call this morning. I'm walking out of class. I teach over at the university and walk out of class, get a call saying, hey, can you come to Baton Rouge? This is Courtney. Courtney calling me. Can you come to Baton Rouge tomorrow? Right. So we're in Thursday. This is Friday tomorrow.
Yeah.
I said, well, yeah, I can come. What's up? She goes, I got you a ticket to the LSU versus Alabama game right there. It's a night game, going to be on TV at Death Valley, at LSU. So nice. I'm like going, yeah. Guess who else is going to be there? Devin. biggest LSU fan on the planet. So I'm going to be able to see not only Courtney tomorrow, because she was going to be there at the game anyway. Now I'm going to the game, and Devin's going to be there. So I want to say, hey, I'm a big LSU fan tomorrow. And I know my cousin Angie and cousin Joe and Lisa, they're all going to be mad at me. They're all Alabama fans. But hey, go Tigers, right? You got to remember, I used to teach. I taught in the faculty at LSU, so cool. I got zero connection to Alabama. So I got. That's gonna be a big game. It's gonna be fun.
That sounds like fun. That's good on you. That sounds like a great time. So,
hey, we're just gonna give her.
Just giving her. Just giving her more than my Oilers are not just giving her right now. They're just sort of waltzing through sleepwalking so far. But anyway. We won't get into any more sports. So the topic today is an interesting one.
Here's how it started, right? So the topic is about debt and use of debt and, necessary evil. And I'm preparing. I built this simulation. I'm doing this kind of 5-6 week simulation in the course about building out a strategy and running it. And I ran across a stat today on my way over to the school. And I'm like going, is this true? Can this be true? The average American right now, Blaine, has $37,000 in credit card debt.
Oh, wow.
Think about that. That's credit card debt. That's not like a mortgage. That's not like a car loan. That's not, student debt. That's just credit card debt. And in most cases, that could be a stake that you just is gone. That's money that you put on the credit card that's just gone. Yeah. And I'm like going, man, there are business owners that do the same thing with debt, right? Yeah. Use it for the wrong way, the wrong place, the wrong time. And one of the topics we've never covered on this podcast is debt and the use of debt in a small business. And I'm like going, well, why is that? I mean, my background. I've spent 15 years training bankers on how to lend to small business. How come we don't talk about this? Right? It's like going, So I thought about that. And I forget when it was. It was a few months or year or so back. It was either my daughter or some other person asked me about FICO scores, right? And they're asking me, do I need it? Do I not need it? And I'm like going, what a scandalous way to trick people into debt. That's a really weird statement for me to say right now, is this FICO score thing that you think you need to have. So what do you think? Do you need a FICO score? Do you know what it is?
I have no idea what a FICO score is.
Okay. Do you have a credit score? Yeah, from the fig plant. So in Canada, is there a score that they give you based on your history of making payments towards credit cards, towards loans or things like that? Is there a score up there?
Yeah, just a credit rating. Yeah.
Okay, credit rating. So FICO score is credit rating, right? Oh, okay. FICO is just a brand name of the score.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Right? Yeah. So anyway, I think it was like Fair. I forget the name. Fair something. I'd have to ask Chelsea. But anyway, now I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. Here's what it is. In order for you to get a loan, to get a credit card, to get debt, they're going to go check your FICO score. Well, how does a young person, like it's in college or whatever, it doesn't have one, right? And the score is calculated where in it anyway. It starts at like 350 and goes to 860 or something, or 0, and then the next step is 350. It's like a weird setup of it doesn't make sense. We like 1 to 100, right? Well, if you have zero debt,
you just made an argument for the metric system, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. I probably did. It probably made more sense, except for I'd have to learn another language. So, but if you have zero debt, you're penalized from getting any debt because you don't have this FICO score. And the only way to get the FICO score is to get debt. And then to get a higher FICO score, you have to get more debt. So think about what I'm saying there. You've got somebody that has no debt, and in order to get debt, they have to have this FICO score. So then all of a sudden you've got this introductory credit card they give to college students that has a $500 limit so they can build credit rating.
Yeah. Yeah, but you don't
Right?
have to,
And
you don't have to actually carry it, do you? Like I always thought like just having credit actually I thought would build that for you. But I didn't think you had to have debt to build that. But maybe you do. I don't know.
Yeah, part of it is your ability to repay, right? Not only do are you making the payments? Can you make the payments? And then, but how much of the debt are you using? But if you don't ever, buy something and then repay it, it just still shows zero, or I guess it shows something.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
you don't have to, right? So, but to increase your score, because the reason why you would want to increase your score is that the higher the score, sometimes you get preferred rates. Like they might give a mortgage of 7% to one person, and somebody with a higher score might get a 5%. So overall, it saves you money in interest, right? Well, but here's where I got into a trick bag in my mind. I'm like, well, if I don't have a FICO score, I have to take on debt to get the FICO score. And then if I want to, and why would I take on debt to get the FICO score? Why would I want to have the FICO score to get debt? It's like this weird catch-22 that happens. And if I want to have an increased one, I have to take on more debt and I have to make more payments. Well, then I thought the opposite. What if I don't want debt? Because this is assuming that you want debt, like I want a mortgage or I want to get a car loan or something like that. What if I don't want debt? I'm into my 40s, 50s now, and debt's not part of my life. I just want to pay cash. What happens? Well, here's what happens. I take the loans or the credit cards that I have and I pay it off to zero. If I do nothing kind of happens. My credit score might increase because I have more available balance. But then if I close those accounts, I no longer have the ability to borrow against the credit card or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. So if I pay off my credit cards and close the account, then my credit score goes down. My credit rating or my FICO score goes down. And over about a year's time, you could have a FICO score of 0. You're back to where you started because you had no debt to begin with, and now you have no debt now.
Yeah.
Well, here's what made me think about that. I heard like a couple of months ago, you've heard of Dave Ramsey?
Yeah, I've heard the name. I don't recall. Is he a podcaster or a writer or something?
He does money management for, personal finance. He does some business stuff, but mainly personal finance. And he's kind of an advocate against debt, right? He's got these programs that help you eliminate debt from your life. And he practices what he's preached. He said he has not had a FICO credit score in almost 30 years, right? Older man. His score is 0. He says, this is where it's caused me problems. He goes, I've got a couple $100 million, because Dave Ramsey is kind of a big name, got programs all across the country, couple $100 million worth of real estate. He goes, I forget the timing of it, and if I screw up the story, Dave, I'm sorry. But he says, I went to rent an apartment. And the 26-year-old manager took my application, sent it over to Georgia. He lives in Tennessee. Sent it to the headquarters in Georgia. The manager in Georgia ran it, right? Ran the actual credit application, came back and declined Dave Ramsey for rent. Wouldn't rent to him because he didn't have a credit score. He goes, I can write a check for a building, but I can't rent an apartment. Is that the craziest thing ever?
Bizarre. Yeah, super bizarre.
So are we incentivizing the right thing? Or are we creating people that are slave to debt now?
Yeah, but if you take advantage of what they offer, and I know like what they're trying to do is hook you into debt, but if you take advantage of the credit, like for years, we pay off our credit card every single month, but we also buy everything on credit card, and the points we get, we'll have a couple of grand of stuff, laptop or iPad or something at the end of the year, because of all the points we get. So if you pay off your credit card religiously and you use the points, you're actually getting paid. I don't get paid to use cash. So there's a benefit to doing that. The problem is if you start carrying balances, your interest is like skyward, like it's ridiculous through a credit card.
Yeah, see, that's where everybody bets. The banks bet that you won't. 78% of people do not pay off their credit cards every month. 78%.
Oh, they hate me. Yeah, I know. They can't stand me because I just make money off them all the time and, use the convenience, right?
So this is my wallet. I have a driver's license and 2 cards in it, a personal and a business. The business is a debit card. The personal is American Express. I don't accumulate debt. If it don't work on one of these 2 cards, guess who doesn't get it? Here's what they also said about credit cards, is that when paying with a credit card, you are more likely to spend 12 to 18% more than you would if you were trying to just use cash. So we are overspending because there's no emotional bond. There's no emotional attachment to the transaction. You're not giving up anything, right? Think about it. You go to the grocery store, you give them a piece of plastic and they give you what? All the groceries, right? And the piece of plastic back. There's no emotional connection. Now you got to pay it. Now there's an emotional connection to money leaving your bank account later. But think about this. If you give them $100 bill, they don't give you the $100 bill back. That's the pain, right? That's the pain that people feel, where it's a discipline that I think actually makes sense. If you're trying to avoid debt and you're trying to, actually live within your means. Yeah. So, and I guess what brought me there was like, there's all this talk about debt bankrupting people. And remember that, it used to be pre-COVID, 50,000 businesses file bankruptcy every year. It's down to around 19,000 now, right? So something good after COVID happened. People started conserving cash. And I think, venture capitalists probably helped with that. I mean, if you're going to run a business and you want to raise money, you got to show us you can make money. Right. Yeah. So I think debt has been on my mind lately because I see people getting in trouble with it, and I wanted to talk about it today. So that was a long-winded way to say I want to talk about debt today, Blaine.
Well, yeah, and I think when we start looking into, I'm surprised that I'll be surprised if the numbers stay low like this year. At the end of the year, I'd be curious to see because I know up in Canada, it feels like there's a lot of places finally ran out of gas because they accumulated a lot of debt through COVID. And that was the only way to stay alive. That was like they closed down that day or they try and fight, keep the fight going for another day. But then when they get hit with inflation, but they can't necessarily raise their prices as much and everything else, there's a lot of places that have disappeared over the last year or this year, really. So, so it's a challenge in business, like to take on debt. Sometimes in business, it's just hanging on, right? And then other times it's taking on debt puts like for stuff that isn't really necessary or doesn't help you grow, doesn't help you expand the business. It's a tricky balance, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying all debt is bad, right? But if I'm, if I got to finance a steak dinner versus finance a house, there's a big difference there. Taking on debt for the house, something that generally is going to appreciate in value or increase in value. And if anything, I don't feel like I'm losing my money. I might be paying interest. And this is the one thing about interest on a house. And I can't speak for Canada. You probably can, but most people go, "Oh, you can deduct your interest."
Yeah, you can't in Canada. I'm quite jealous with what you guys can do down here because you can deduct that interest in Canada.
Don't be, because the myth behind it is 92% of the people in America don't itemize their taxes. They use the standard deduction. They keep raising the standard deduction, which actually makes it easier to file your taxes, but it makes the interest expense just an expense because they say, "Hey, listen, if your itemized deductions don't, don't exceed 24,000 or 20, whatever the number is for a married couple, or a single person is like 14,000 or 12,000. I can't remember the exact number, but if you don't have enough itemized deductions to exceed that number, then you have to take the standard deduction, which means you don't have to show proof of the interest. They're going to give you that anyway.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
92% of the people, when they file their taxes, that means there's only 8% of the people the interest even matters. And guess what? 8%, the people that have higher incomes, wealthier. Yeah. So anyway, that's a, boy, we got way off topic, and maybe it's not, because, people are planning for taxes. People, that's been on my mind. But in the second part of this episode, I kind of want to talk about how debt should be structured in a small business. But hey, before that, what's your take on business debt? When you say, hey, listen, sometimes it's necessity, sometimes it's for growth. You got anything? What's your take?
Yeah, it's there's not a lot of, like, there's not a whole lot of businesses out there that can probably start and grow and scale the way they want to without using capital, without having some debt. And I think when it's used correctly, it's critical. Like, there's a lot of businesses. There's a ton of businesses. They can't even exist. They wouldn't exist. You can't, we wouldn't be able to, go down to whatever's down the street here because they just don't have that kind of money. They have to have debt to get started. Right. But then I also think there's a lot of companies that maybe aren't really keeping a tight eye on things and keeping track of things, and putting a lot of money that they don't need to, and end up taking on debt to cover things that they probably don't really need. Almost like you said, the person that's kind of, throw the steak dinner on or whatever, right? So it can be a very critical, useful, and absolutely necessary tool. And then there's other times where it can kill a business, right?
Yeah, I think that is right. So, I mean, that's where it comes back to me. Like, I've tried very hard in all of these businesses not to accumulate debt. I've gotten a line of credit in each of them. I've got a line of credit now for Cash Flow Mike, 0 balance. I've used it one time, and that was because I took a risk on something, and then I immediately paid it off as soon as it paid in, as soon as it cashed in. Yeah. It was to finance a project, and then as soon as I got paid for the project, paid off the line of credit, and it was very small. But for me, I think if you practice this rule of having 3 to 6 months operating expense just in reserve, it eliminates a lot of the need to accumulate a credit card balance for just consumables, right? Mm-hmm. And I say consumables like, oh, I need printer ink. Oh, I need this. Because there's a tendency of, if it's on the credit card and you're like, I just won't pay that much on it. I'll just pay half of it this month. I'll just, you know how we are? You're like, I just pay a little bit of it this month or that. And by the way, I am not naive enough to know that credit card debt is the one thing people don't want to talk about. Just don't. Right? Everybody's like, I'm not going to say anything about how much I owe, because it's one of those things. That's one of the taboo subjects of the world, is how much we owe on credit cards. But it happens because I don't know if it's a little. I'm going to say, from my personal point, it's lazy. Like, just use a credit card, put it there, I'll pay it when I get to it. But then that happens a couple of times over, and I'm like, oh shoot, I owe a couple $1,000s on here all of a sudden. Then I pay it off. Yeah. But I get lazy with it.
I am way too cheap for that. Like, I am not giving the bank a nickel more than I need to. So like I said, I'm the one where I'm like, I want my points and I'm paying this off, because it's kind of a trick about it. Right?
That's why I use these two. Two, there's no credit involved. If I can't pay for it, I don't buy it.
Yeah, but if you do have the cash there, you are giving away money. You are, like, if you're disciplined and you actually are giving away money, and it can be a lot, like for business expenses, especially, even personally, like we try and put everything we possibly, and I'm not saying, because maybe this doesn't work for everybody. I will put every single thing that we have to pay for on credit card if I can, and we pay it off every month, because the points pile up and it adds up to a lot of cash by the end of the year when I'm not paying cash. Everything is running through and accumulating points. So you have to be disciplined, of course, to do it, but it makes me money, and it makes quite a bit of money.
No, it does. I mean, like this American Express right here, I bought those chairs with points. It definitely will. I mean, it definitely will make you some money. I run all my basic expenses. If I get gas, if I get beer, I buy it on the American Express.
All of it. Yep.
All of it.
Yep.
But to me, that's saying if I don't have the cash, then I'm not buying the beer. I'm not buying the the new sweatshirt or whatever I want.
Yeah, it's just to me, I use it for convenience and points and nothing more. But it has to be like it's paid off, right?
Yeah. So check this out, right? Remember, I'm going to Alabama. I'm not Alabama, Baton Rouge tomorrow. That's 1 day notice on a plane ticket. You know what those cost?
Ooh, yeah.
And because it's not only Baton Rouge, and I can't fly into Baton Rouge, that ticket was $1,000. So I had to go to New Orleans, right? I have to go to New Orleans one way, $1,000 one way to get to Baton Rouge. I have to go to New Orleans and drive up. I can't drive up because Tulane and some other colleges down in New Orleans are having their homecoming. There are 0 rental cars 1 day in advance in New Orleans. So when I go to New York, I use this company called Black Lane, and it's just it's better than Uber because you schedule. I'm going to be at the airport at this time, and they'll give you a nice car and they'll give you a ride. So it's like a car service, and I use it in New York because it's super easy. It's so I'm like, I wonder if Black Lane's in New Orleans, because I didn't know how to get from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. It's about an hour drive. Black Lane's in New Orleans, they'll drive me up to Baton Rouge. And so that's the most expensive part of my trip is the drive. But I would have rented a car anyway, and it was about the same price. I was able to do this. I had enough points on Southwest. I got the flight for free. Nice. Right? So, I mean, but that's just having the airline miles and stuff like that. You're like, oh, yeah, I'll go to Baton Rouge for free or New Orleans for free. Only pay for the ride up, and then from there I'll stay with Courtney and ride in her rental car back to New Orleans. Yeah. So it's almost a free trip.
Nice,
but it's leveraging debt and stuff the right way.
Yeah, well, and like that's the thing that it's for people in their personal lives, but it's also again business owners. The vast majority of business owners I've talked with start their business because of identifying a problem or a level of expertise or whatever. Most of them don't actually have any sort of education, like finance education of any type. And I wonder how much better off people would be if they had a finance class from grade 1 through 12 every year. A finance class, because it's amazing for me to hear that people are spending interest on credit cards, but not making interest on investments. And there's so much money that's left on the table for people and I think a lot of it is just the education, and it's an education that I think should be started early and all the way through, because imagine you do that, you carry a credit card balance for 20 years. Where how much money are you basically flushing down a toilet, and same thing with the business, but because it's the same people and they may not have that, until they get big enough to have, or hey, they have an accountant banging on their door, yelling at them, or, actually get to a CFO level. Are they kind of operating in the same way? And I just look at how much better would the economies of our two countries be if people actually, the banks wouldn't like it because the credit card companies, they wouldn't like it. But imagine how much stronger the economy would be, how much more money people would have, and they'd be spending it smartly, but they would be spending it. And, you know, it drives me nuts to hear sometimes what like how people operate, because I think some of it is they just don't really realize the impact.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'll tell you what, if you're running a business right now and you didn't take any finance class in grade K through 12 because they didn't offer it or whatever like that, you are not missing out. You can get a finance class today. It's called the Clear Path to Cash, and I offer it at Cashflow Mike. One of the lessons specifically is called How to Deal with Your Banker, where I talk about how to structure debt, how to avoid mismatch financing, which is using the wrong loan product to buy something which cost you money. It is one of the silent killers of business called mismatch financing because it robs your business of cash in the form of interest. And I'll give you an example. Would you buy a house with a credit card? No, we wouldn't do that, right? Because
if I could pay it off and get the points.
Hey, great miles. You would get a ton of miles if you could do it like that, right? So if you could do it, yeah, there you go. But most people don't, because credit cards are anywhere between 18 to 30% right now. And, you know, mortgages are 7%. That's how it robs your business of cash. And nobody ever walks out the door in the morning and says, I am going to misfinance my company today. It just happens. I mean, it happened to me. Yeah. I walked in, I had a cooler that was broke down, and I went and bought it on a credit card at the restaurant supply store just to buy a new one. Something I could depreciate, that I could spread out the expense of over the life of the asset. So that's the rule. That's the thing. I know this is a commercial for Cashflow Mike, but the rule for financing anything that you can depreciate is the length of the loan should match the life of the asset. So if you buy something you can appreciate for 5 years, buy it with a 5-year term loan if you don't use cash. Doing that avoids mismatch financing. That's the rule that kind of helps you make sure you get the right product for the right time. If you want to learn more about how to do this, go to cashflowmike.com, check out my course, The Clear Path to Cash, get involved. I'll teach you how to deal with your banker and get loans that actually help you grow your business. That's what I do. Yeah.
Nice segue there. And you know, all joking aside, like there's businesses now that this is, there was a time where businesses probably weren't so worried about things like this. And now it's, you know, it's just tight and things are a little bit trickier. This is a perfect time to go and unpack this stuff for your business, so you know exactly what you got to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talk about it, I mean, I like debt for growth. I actually do, right? I mean, if I need a new truck because I'm increasing, first of all, in your business right now, do not buy an asset unless you intend it to grow revenue or grow profit. That's the only reason to do it. One of the biggest fights I ever had with an accountant was they were trying to tell my client that to save $30,000 in taxes, they needed to buy a $225,000 tractor. That don't make sense to me. Like, did he get more land? Does this tractor produce more revenue? No, it's just a way to avoid the tax. So you want him to make monthly payments on a $225,000 tractor so he can avoid $30,000 tax payment, but make no more money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't make sense.
The math doesn't add up. I still remember having to let go of my at that time, my favorite car. I loved her so much. And then my accountant said, you got to get rid of that thing. You can't write it off anymore. Well, what happens when you get rid of a car that I love is we went and leased cars and we're paying for them every single month. And you never make back all these amazing tax savings. Trust me, they don't cover the freaking cost of the car that we're putting in. And I look at that now and just go, that was not the brightest idea. Like we would have been better off
just paid the tax.
Just paid the tax.
Just paid the tax. I mean, people think about like, oh my God, I owe tax. That's the best. That's your goal. Your goal is to owe tax. Right? Yeah. Because that means you made a shit ton of money.
Made money. Exactly. Like how many times have you heard this? It's just like, you know, some company, I don't know, lost their shirt on something. It's like, oh, it's a right. They just write it off. And it's like, and I'm like, you realize they spent the money and they lost it and they wrote off a small portion of it.
Yeah.
Like that's not how it works. I think they think it zeroes out. It's like, no, it doesn't zero out. You lose money. That's what happens is you lose money.
Yeah, exactly right. You already spent the money. You didn't write it off. I mean, like it's a magic, like it just goes away.
Not magic. Yeah.
I get the money back.
No. And you get a percentage of like a small percentage of it as a write-off. Like but that's again, like, that's like, we need finance from grade 1 through 12 because that's kind of the perception. It doesn't add up. Right.
You know what? The more I've talked to people around the country about this, what you're talking about, I have to give kudos to Knox County, Illinois, right? Where I went to school, Galesburg, Knoxville, because your sophomore year is the only year you do this thing that's called a trimester. Every other year, it's a semester, right? So half the year and half the year. But you have this one set of classes that is a trimester, right? During your sophomore year. And the 3 classes you take, driver's ed, taught in school where you learn it as a class in school and get your permit and you actually go drive. They had a driver's ed car at the school. The other one was health, right? You got to know about your stuff, yourself. The third one was personal finance, credit cards, checking accounts, those type of things. So your sophomore year, it's really one class that you take all year long, but it's 3 different sections, driver's ed, and you kind of rotate through. I didn't realize they didn't do that. I didn't realize.
I can't believe I don't know if anyone, I don't know what schools are like today, but I don't get the sense it's brimming with finance classes. But I know that sounds like quite a rarity to me. And it is something that it shouldn't even be one semester or one trimester when you're right before you graduate. Instill these ideas, even part of a class, right from instill these ideas into people, into kids, so that they grow up with this and they understand it. They don't just hear about it. They understand it because it's like, yeah, they're taking this every year and it's building on top of each other every year, even if it's just a part of one course every single year. And I don't think that happens at all. And it's amazing that the damage I think that does, right?
Yeah. So when you think about that, so now you're talking K through 12. My oldest granddaughter's 2nd grade. She got her first progress report today. As a matter of fact, straight A's, right? And now you're like, 2nd grade. You're right. That wasn't, all the comments about being a good citizen and those type of things made me proud. The other thing was we've moved Addie's her name, into the advanced reading. So we pull her out part of the day because she's reading at such an advanced level of the rest of the class. She's in an accelerated type program to encourage more reading and to develop that skill. I'm like going, that's kind of cool, right? So, to me, I'm like going, you should be proud when you get acknowledged that something is going right in the child's education. She has a love of reading. She has a love, and plus the straight A's thing of, math and all that other stuff. Now, I know it's 2nd grade, but it's a start. And you want to encourage that because you want them to continue to learn. As soon as the iPad and TikTok and all that gets in her life, you're going to be competing against that as a parent. Yeah.
That was a little bit of BS here because that was the opposite experience for my mom when I was in grade 2. Because I had to go to the portable and go into the dumb kid class to learn how to read because I spent grade 2 standing in the corner because apparently I was disruptive in class. And then Mrs. Eagles, I was in that class and I would stand in the corner and I'd run a pencil up and down the crack in the corner. And at the end of the year, it turned out I couldn't really read. But then my mom noticed that my cousin, who's the same age as me, could read. And then she went and talked with the school. And then suddenly I'm in the portable with the other kids that couldn't read.
Hey, you speaking of, BS, when you say things like grade 2, my mind went instantly to Trailer Park Boys where the guys are like, I'm going to get my grade 10 soon. He's like 40 years old. I'm working on my grade 10. Yeah, it was Ricky. Yeah, it was Ricky. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I'm working on my grade 10 right now. Maybe get my grade 11.
Yeah. Yeah. For those of you out there that are going to, chuck shade my way, I do have a couple of different degrees, and so I'm not like I did learn how to read, and I did progress from grade 2, but I was neither probably straight A nor I got the disruptive in class thing, I think so. But anyway,
yeah, hey,
that's how it goes.
Sometimes you just got to stick to your knitting, man. If you're not a reader, you're not a reader.
Slip that one through. Nice work.
That's funny.
Nice work.
That's funny. That's pretty good. All right, so let's kind of end on this. I really do think that I want to caution against taking or using credit for just consumable things that you actually do have the cash for, right? Because I know there's a survivability where you got to do it just to see if you can put something together. But if you got the cash, use the cash, right? I mean, for consumable little purchases. Otherwise, those little things pile up really fast.
Yeah. Or at least like that stuff, just make sure you like that. You have to be religious about paying off your credit card, because you don't want the office supplies to cost you an extra 20% at the end of the year, like, because you've been lax on it, right? But I totally agree. Like there's points where capital, like to kick off, to get started, to grow, to survive. That's different. But man, if you can, you want to be in the black at the end of the year. And exactly like you said, Mike, like if you're paying some tax at the end of the year, that's because you actually were profitable at the end of the year. You made some money.
You did things right.
You did things right. If you're getting to the end of the year and you owe cash every year, I don't think that's typically the best idea.
Yeah. So if you think about debt and levels, right? The bottom, the base level, there's two different versions of it, but one is what we call gross fixed assets. That's your stuff. That's your equipment. That's your vehicles. That's your buildings. Always, if you're not paying cash, use a term loan for that. Your inventory, your what they call base level working capital. And I guess I didn't tell you, when I say use a term loan, most people don't know where they calculate the payments from. They're going to look at your EBITDA, right? Which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. EBITDA is another word for cash flow. What's the real cash coming through there? That's how they determine how much you can afford. So in just a rule of thumb, look at your EBITDA and multiply it by 3. That's about the max you're going to get in debt, right? That max they're going to give you in a long-term loan. Now, if you already have a long-term loan out there on your business books, subtract that. So don't think, oh, I'm going to get $1 million and ask for $1 million. Oh, you got $500,000 already that you owe. No, your debt ceiling then becomes $500,000, right? So it's what you already have plus that. So EBITDA is about how much you can afford to pay. That's kind of a quick podcast rule of thumb.
Yeah.
The second level is kind of for like inventory or payroll, what I use for payroll, those working capital, but it's called permanent working capital. And believe it or not, you can actually get a term loan for your inventory. And if you do it right, you'll only ever have to pay for your inventory once. You'll buy it the first time. And then after that, every time that somebody pays for the inventory or you sell it to them, you take their money and replace it and then work with what's left. If you do that, you're going to use the customer's money to replace your inventory time and time again. You only bought it one time. The third level, notice I haven't said credit card yet. I said term loan, term loan. The third level is where you use your line of credit. And this is for those to meet peak demand. Peak demand is like going, maybe I sell beer at the bar. Well, I got beer day, the Super Bowl's a big day, 4th of July, Cinco de Mayo, those are big days. I buy the extra stuff with my line of credit. And as soon as the customer gives me the money, I pay off the line of credit. If you just follow that, that's the basics, the foundation that every business needs. Notice I didn't say credit card. I guess you could use credit card for the seasonal stuff if you treat it like a line of credit.
Yeah, like I would use a credit card for the small expenses, but again, it's a hard set rule. You pay it off every single month. You take your points. You're happy with it. So, your monthly software, your office supplies, your small things like that, pay it off religiously every single month, and take your points and be thrilled with that. But if you're carrying that credit card cost, you're paying way too much. You're paying interest, like big interest on all of this stuff. That's the opposite. That's it's just bleeding cash then.
That's right. You can't put every fiddle hopper on a credit card. You got to really actually.
Unless you want to buy the fiddle hopper on your points.
Are you going to try to sneak it in?
I was planning to, but anyway, you
man. Hey,
the punch.
You beat me like you beat me like 7 in a row. If you don't know what we're talking about, like it's the first time I ever listened to this. Hey, by the way, you said you had somebody you knew watch the first one and the last one.
Yeah, no, I met with the CFO this week, and he mentioned that he watched our first episode and the last one. I thought that was, well, first of all, like, oh man, that first one was probably pretty tough to watch, but because I'm assuming we've gotten better since then. But I just thought it was kind of fun that he watched the first and the last, so that was kind of neat.
Yeah, so maybe that's a challenge to you people out there, right? Anybody's listening, say, go watch the first one and tell us what you think is different. Put it on Facebook, just say, hey, listen, here's what I noticed. And maybe we were better then, and we should go back and look. Because I told Blaine, I'm like going, it had to be terrible. I can't even remember what we talked about.
I have no idea. All I know is like I'm sure we didn't have a jingle. We had nothing. We were just like sitting in the basement during COVID, probably just talking. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you what, I missed you, man. I missed you.
Me too.
I'm glad you're back. Fun. I'm glad you're down in the U.S. January, I'm coming to Phoenix. Don't forget.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, when I get the flyer, I'll send it to you so you can come over for that. It's a day long. By the way, be looking out for this. If you're in Phoenix or that area, I'm doing a day-long seminar for the National Bank of Arizona and the Arizona Small Business Association, and it's going to be at the National Bank of Arizona's conference center right on their campus. So nice. Great day. It's going to be 6 hours of just stuff. You're going to love it.
Nice. Awesome, man. Yeah, I can't wait to see you guys. That's going to be so much fun. So glad to be down here. It's warm. I get to see you. It's going to be super fun. And this was, like I said, it felt like months off. We get so used to this every week. So glad we're both back, and we'll be back at it next week with 167.
Check out their website at mikeandblaine.com. Then subscribe to the podcast and buy these guys a beer.